I was held at gunpoint by the military. I had to avoid the bandits of the south of Madagascar. I had to cross crocodile-infested rivers. I was bitten by spiders that infected. I contracted the deadliest strain of malaria. It was full on.
He's a British explorer, extreme athlete, and 3-time world first record holder. Since publishing his first book, Mission Possible, in 2017, he's become a well-known motivational speaker and advocate for achieving the impossible. Ash Dykes.
I think I probably made no more than £3,000 in 12 months after completing a world first record. And I think that is what the true catalyst was. After Madagascar, it was the book, which then allowed me to see a clear future.
Ash, welcome to the Inspired By Show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It feels very exciting to have you finally in here, because between all your exhibitions and your adventures and everything, getting a date booked in has been fun. But you're here now.
I'm here. It's been busy. But yeah, it's about time we get something sorted, isn't it? For sure.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously you're known as an explorer, adventurer, athlete.
Yeah.
Bit of a crazy person, if you will.
All-round madman, for sure, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious, have you always been really adventurous as a kid, or is it something that you kind of like learned and grown up to as an adult?
Yes, I have been always adventurous, but I was more into athletics as a kid. It was more sports, so it was less the hiking and the camping, and it was more the football, the rugby, growing up in Wales, and all-round athletics. So I loved that, and I loved the competition of it. But then I would say when I was 15, 16, I started getting into more of the camping out and the survival and the hiking and sort of bringing out the world map. And just in general, I would say watching shows like David Attenborough show, seeing all of this amazing sort of activity going on around the world in terms of wildlife, in terms of all of these foreign destinations. And I was just hooked. I didn't want to sit down and watch it on TV. I wanted to get out there and be amongst it. And as well as that, I've got a granddad who lived in Pakistan for 21 years, overstayed his visa for like 18 years, overstayed it for. So he was kicked out of the country, then lived in India. But during that process, I only saw him maybe 5-6 times during my life. But when he came back, he would share these crazy stories about the wilderness of Pakistan and India, and and I would just be like hooked. And then of course the internet and seeing posters or magazines, the Great Wall of China, the Amazon rainforest. There was that curiosity. So I was very physically athletic, but I was also very curious to travel. But, I'm from a small, sleepy town, Old Colwyn, that no one really knows, on the coast of North Wales. It's very pretty. It's on the coast. You've got, the mountains. Great for someone like me who likes the outdoors, but not many contacts, not many people around that area sort of making it out of that area doing big things. So there was no one to really look at and be like, he's done it. Why don't I do it too? But, there was a plan, and I had good support from my parents in terms of not financially, because we come from non-privileged background effectively, but in terms of spiritually, emotionally, they're both very driven, and they were always so positive. And they always said, whatever you want to achieve, you've got to put in the hard work yourself and make it happen, because no one else is going to make it happen for you. So, all of this was a mix of me coming up with big plans at the age of 16, 17 is when I first started to plan to travel the world.
Wow, that's incredible. And I'm sure for some parents, they'd be like, he'll grow out of it. I hope, maybe. Yeah. Or they'll be like, oh, it's just a dream, and now he'll go to uni and he'll go and get a job or whatever. At what point do you think that you took it really seriously, and they also took, like, people were actually like, Ash is serious about this?
I think it was the day, and I remember vividly, it was a nice summer's sunny day. It was me and my dad, and we were in sort of the back garden, and he could see that I was passionate about making something happen. I want to get out of here. I'm working multiple jobs, worked in a fish and chip shop. I was working as a waiter. I was working as a lifeguard. So the money was, was coming in. I was grinding hard. And I said, how do I, I've never boarded a plane by myself. I've never applied for a visa. I don't know what vaccinations I want. I don't even know where I want to go. I just know that I want to go. And I remember him sitting down, sort of drawing like a spider diagram. And he started to break down all of this to make it less overwhelming. And he was like, first, look at selling your car, because I had like a Mark II Renault Clio that I modified. You know, he's like, sell your car, get the money from that, work this amount of hours, look at where you want to go, speak to the GP about vaccinations, look at how you can apply for visa, look at what you want to do in that country. So by him breaking down this at age 16, this plan that seemed daunting and overwhelming, all of a sudden I had a grasp. It was all on a piece of paper. I kind of knew the steps. And by breaking the goals down like that, I was kind of like, right, this is happening. And so I literally put a for sale sign on my car. He saw that, my mum saw that, and they were kind of like, he's pretty serious. I managed to secure a contract in lifeguarding, so I was working full time, quit the other 2 jobs, bringing in that money. And I could see it, you know, and all of my other friends, they were kind of like, oh, it's all good. You'll go off and travel and you tick all of these things off the list, but you'll end up coming back home because of money running out. And we would have all moved on with our lives and our careers, you know, with our degrees in university, and you'll come back and you'll be back to square one. And, you know, there was a very real possibility of that. So I remember that scaring me, thinking, oh, Jesus, well, they're not wrong, you know. So I remember thinking, how can I mitigate that? What can I do now to invest in myself so that I can use that skill or that qualification to make money abroad whilst I travel? And so I started to learn how to scuba dive. And so I started to climb and work my way up the ranks as a scuba diver, in the hope that I could then find work abroad as a master scuba diving instructor, where I can bring money in.
Wow.
So that I wouldn't have to sort of come back and be back to square one.
So it kind of became more of a career move that made sense, so you could travel and make money. So you weren't just doing what most people do when they go traveling, which is have a year away, be skint, come back, work, go away, do something else. Because obviously what you were doing when you were traveling was not cheap, you know, and whether it's early on or now, you know, these exhibitions, all this big adventure stuff, I think a lot of people think you need the grit for it. You also need the bank account, right?
Yeah, you do. Yes and no. So actually, when I left at age 19, I had, to be open and honest, I had a plan of 4 years to travel. And I had saved within those 1.5 to 2 years, £10,000, because I was only 19 at the time when I left. So I literally left. I booked a one-way ticket to China with £10,000 in my account with my friend Matt, and we were on a shoestring budget because we wanted that 10 grand to last 4 years whilst we travelled. I was never money motivated, and this was never a career back then. It never even crossed my mind that it could be a career. I just wanted to go out there, learn through experience. I found that when I was in college doing an outdoor education course, the worst part was just sat down listening to the teacher talk about things I didn't necessarily care about. That wasn't what I was passionate in. The best case was when I was physically practicing everything, when I was hands-on, experiencing all of the different activities. I learned so much more. And that's when I decided I didn't want to progress on to university or to have a life around Old Colwyn in North Wales. I want to go off, I want to travel, I want to learn about myself, how I handle different scenarios and situations, learn about the world, different cultures, different traditions. And I believe that all of this would just develop me tenfold and so much more than in university. So that was my thinking. However, I didn't really have much money. And so when I set off for traveling and went to China, this was great, but it was like 2 weeks, very much on the beaten track, sharing the same photos, stories, and experiences as all of the rest of the travelers. And I was just like, when I'd see David Attenborough shows, I didn't want to go to Beijing or to China just to be in the city. I wanted to be out there amongst it, as I said earlier. And so it would be a case of, after those 2 weeks in China, I left and realized we had done nothing new, no new experience, no unique photos, no different stories. You know, we're all in the same bus, all walking along the Great Wall as a big tour package. I just didn't like it. So when I was in Cambodia, me and my friend, we were sulking on the Mekong riverbank, you know, eating some cheap noodles. I think we probably threw an egg in there if we could afford it. And we were just like, we're on the beaten track. You know, we need to do something different. This isn't what we came for. And then I said to my friend randomly, how about we purchase the cheapest bicycles we can find? and we end up cycling the entire length of Cambodia and Vietnam. And, my friend laughed and he was like, that sounds great, but on what bikes? And as he said that, there was this old lady cycling like this ridiculous looking bicycle. The handlebars were turned in. She had a little pink bell, a basket on the front, but it looked like something we could afford. And I said, we purchased 2 of them. And then for $10, we got those bikes. We had no pump, no puncture repair kit, no electronics other than literally the little camera that we had with us. We found string on the side of the road that we strapped the rucksack onto the back with, and off we went and cycled over 1,100 miles, the length of Cambodia, Vietnam. No helmet, no lights, no reflective clothes, like very reckless. We were only teenagers, but we made it happen. A loaf of bread and peanut butter in the basket. We were chased by dogs, hit by mopeds, dodged by lorries, but after 2.5 weeks, we made it. And I think that is what the true catalyst was for everything that I did after. So initially, it was just to go out, to travel, to learn, to grow, to develop in a very unique way. And then let's see what happens after that. But then after that Vietnam cycle, I was hooked. I found my niche, found my passion. And I was like, this is it. Adventure is my life. On to the next.
And obviously, that part you mentioned there, you were hooked. What was it you were hooked on? Was it like the uncertainty, the curiosity of it all? What was it where you were like, I want to go on and do more adventures?
Yeah, I think it was everything. I think it was definitely the curiosity. It was the fact that despite everything that we faced, because we faced an awful lot, we were still going and we were still laughing. And we were like, okay. And so I was kind of curious as to what my limits were, because nothing fazed us. And we went over 45 hours with no sleep. And 39 hours of that was cycling through the day, through the night, through the following day in 44 degrees Celsius. And we were still on it, So it was a case of like, how far can we push? Where can we go next? And I had this big idea that at the end of my days, at the end of my life, I would have collected all of these different experiences, and I'll have a world map, and via different countries and continents, I'll have lines sketched out of where I hiked, where I survived, where I cycled, where I, all of these different sort of cool, unique experiences. And so there was also that side as well. But still at that point, I had no idea it could be a career. So whilst it was the catalyst and whilst I found what I really loved doing, I knew that I couldn't make money from it. Like back then, I was kind of like, well, this is only short-lived, and then I'll find a job. Maybe it'll be a scuba diver and a snowboard instructor, and I can bounce around the world, sort of topping up the funds, and in between the seasons, maybe I can do another adventure. So that was the plan. But we didn't stop. I say we, it was me and my friend Matt Norman. And after that, again, age 19, we cross into Thailand, and then we cross using the jungle illegally, because there was no border control, from Thailand to Myanmar, where we were taken under a tribal community's wing, and we were taught how to survive in the jungle. And at age 19, as you can imagine, that just opened my mind. I was just like, this is off the beaten track. This is cheap, and this is an experience that not many people have, because I feel, you've only got this one life. It's about doing stuff that you really want to do, not waste that time. And for me, that was something that I really wanted to do, these different experiences and adventures. So I cracked on with it, regardless of the lack of funds and regardless of the experience, really, just went straight from school, straight out into the wilderness. But they were teaching me how to hunt, how to gather berries that act as a mosquito repellent, how to build rafts to cross rivers or shelter using natural resources. And then, the adventures just kept on coming after that.
Oh my gosh. It literally sounds like something in a movie that you hear the fiction, and it's actually like your teenage years, as an older teenager. Now, obviously you've then gone on and you've had book deals and TV and these incredible, world records where you've done the first ever in the world.
Yeah.
How did you get from this sort of adventure to now it is a career and it is something that you've done incredibly well for?
Appreciate that.
What was the journey like, and how did you do it? Now, if you've been watching this episode and there's any part of you that's thinking, do you know what, I would love to learn how to write a book, but I just don't know where to start. Maybe you're thinking, Chloe, I've got loads of ideas, but I feel like I need to plan it out and know what goes in my book where. Then I've got a little gift for you. I created a book writing planner that we've used for all of our books that we've published. And usually it was only for our clients that we publish with, because if I can help them write their book, then they're more likely to publish with us. Now, however, what I found was loads of people struggle with this before they even start to work with publishers. So what I've decided to do, and I've agreed it with the team, that I can give you this planner for free, okay? All you've got to do is enter your name and email into our system, and the team will actually send you out the planner. Now, the planner is like a PDF document that you can fill in your details. This goes through and helps you get your ideas for your book. It works out who your book's for, helps you plan the structure of your book, the content of your book, and how you're going to actually launch it. So it helps you take your book from start to finish, all in a very simple planner. So if there's any part of you that wants to write your book and you get really overwhelmed or you don't know what to put in it and where, then the planner is for you. As I said, just pop your name and details into the planner and it will get sent straight to your inbox and you can go from there.
So from the jungle, cutting a long story short, I continued to do lots of different adventures around Southeast Asia and Australia. Tried working in Australia, picking fruit and door-to-door salesman. And then I actually remember I was hiking semi-illegally again on the border of Pakistan and India in the Himalayas, which was an amazing experience. But I remember that sort of almost like shock of capture of, oh, money's running low. And there was always that anxiety. I hated that around money back then, where there was always, no matter what I did, adventure-wise, could be out in the wilderness, I would always be thinking about the finance side, and so I really didn't like that. And I then went back to Thailand, but then for the next 2 years, I was working as a master scuba diving instructor and a Muay Thai fighter. So the scuba diving was full-time, but it's in Thailand, you don't get paid too much money. And so I was fighting on the side, because if you win a fight, you win enough to pay maybe 2 months worth of accommodation. Which it still isn't a lot because we're not in expensive accommodation. But I had this balance of extreme sports, fitness training, competition, which I love, all of this. But after 2 years, any job, no matter what you do, any job becomes repetitive if you don't continue to mix it up. And even though I felt like I was living the life, I got bored. I started missing my time in the jungle, missing my time cycling Vietnam, trekking the Himalayas. And I was getting quite restless at this point. And I was like, what can I do that is better than anything I have done in the past? And bearing in mind, I was on the tourist route for a good 2 years. So I meet tourists from all over the world who tell me about their travel plans, where they've been, where they plan on going. And no one had mentioned Mongolia. No one. And I was like, why isn't anyone going to Mongolia? This was 2010 now to 2011. And through the curiosity again, I started to think of Mongolia and sort of what that would look like. And I now wanted it to be a hike, because if there's a road and if there's a tarmac road, you're safe. Whether you're running, whether you're cycling, there's going to be people. If there's a road, there's going to be food, there's going to be water, there's going to be safety. Now, the idea of Mongolia, I was thinking there's not going to be roads, not the route that I plan to take. There is the Altai Mountains, there is the Gobi Desert, the Mongolian steppe, you've got your eagle hunters in the west, you've got your camel herders in the south, your reindeer tribesmen up north. It was all just crazy for me to think that maybe I could do a walking expedition where I'm relying solely on myself to survive. So that's where we took it to the next level. And I started to do extensive research. I started to look at different people that could help with the logistics, but also reached out to, because my idea was the best way to go about doing this is to find all of those people who have done it before. I wasn't in it for the record. I just wanted to do that adventure. But the more I started to research, we couldn't find any evidence to suggest that anyone had hiked solo and unsupported. And that's the clear difference here, solo and unsupported. For thousands of years, there's been nomads crossing the country, looping the world. But to cross Mongolia alone and unsupported, with no camels, with no yak, with no people, with no horses, with such long distances between water sources, means you'd have to take some sort of wheeled contraption that they just couldn't build back then. And we did find someone who had attempted. He was a soldier. He had attempted 3 times, but was unfortunately evacuated. I think it was just after the halfway point. And I looked into him, and he was a soldier. He was a desert explorer. He looked like Jason Statham, and he was mid-30s, early 40s, so he had a lot of experience, and I was the speech bum fighter, scuba diver, living on an island, and I was like, no, I can't do this. But then I thought, let's email him, let's see what he says. So, very amateur email, what are the dangers? And he came back with this massive list saying you need to watch out for the drunken nomadic drifters, the steep ravines, the snow blizzards, the sandstorms, the grey wolves, the stagnant water, the dry wells, and the list went on and on and on. And I remember reading this email, I put Mongolia to bed and bringing out the map of Europe. Maybe a safer European country will be better. But then I thought, just because no one's found a way to do something doesn't mean it can't be done. And with the right logistics, with the right preparation, mentally as well as physically, maybe I could be the first to complete this. And, I was only 22 now at that time. Very foolhardy, borderline reckless. I had no insurance. I had no evacuation plan. I can talk about it now, but that expedition, being a world first, people assume it's going to cost 100 or 200,000 pounds at least, $5,000 to make that happen. Hence the lack of insurance. Hence the no evacuation. If I get into trouble, it'd be a text only to my agent, who would have to come by vehicle, but I would need to allow at least 4 days for him to get to me if he found me on time. Whereas if you stand on the back end of a snake and you're waiting 4 days, you're dead. It's not happening. Or dehydration, that can take you within only a couple of days. But I came back to the UK, and I had £200 to my name. And so I had to move back in with my parents. So I couldn't afford gym membership. And so I started to train in the back garden. I had my uncle drop me off a tractor tire, a sledgehammer. So all of the preparation. And I know a lot of people say you need certain things to get started. You don't. You've just got to make use of what you've got around you to achieve what it is you want to achieve. And that's pretty much all as I was doing in the back garden, just getting ready for that mentally and physically.
Oh my gosh. And just for anyone, I'm just thinking, anyone that's listening that's thinking, I can't even be asked to go to the gym, it's amazing to see what you can put your mind to when you really set your heart to it.
Yeah.
So at what point did this then start to become a public thing and people start to know you were doing it? And then how did it actually go?
Yeah, so it was probably... I tried to make, so all of the early adventures I wasn't on social media for, which is, there's pros and cons, right? The pro is I get to be there and really enjoy it for the pure passion and love and not sharing on social media. But the con is I was then a few years behind, and I had to bring people up to speed, I felt, with all of the previous adventures. And there was only I think 1,000 followers that I had on Instagram when I was doing Mongolia, a legitimate world first record. And so I tried to share, but it felt like I was sharing to nobody. But it was on completion of Mongolia that things started to really blow up. It was 3 weeks over the Altai Mountains, 5 weeks across the Gobi Desert, and then 3 weeks through the Mongolian steppe. And just to put it into perspective, in order to survive a journey like that and make the vast distances between water sources, you'd have to carry a wheeled trailer. And that wheeled trailer, because I didn't have the budget to pay for something like carbon fiber, which would have been a lot lighter, I had it built for free by a family friend who made it of mild steel. So on an empty load, it's 40 kilograms with nothing in it. On a full load, which was the majority of the trek, it was 120 kilograms. So the same weight as a world heavyweight boxer. So it's not just crossing a country solo and unsupported. It's crossing a country solo and unsupported over the Altai Mountains through the Gobi Desert, whilst pulling a 260-pound trailer behind you. And so I think that's when people started to get wind of the difficulty of the task. And so it started to grow. And then on completion, because I kind of remember telling my dad, because my dad's pretty much part of the business now. And I remember telling him, if I can make this, there could be something after this, career. And I think he looked and felt hopeful too, but I didn't know how to produce a book. I didn't know how to present. I was a nervous presenter in college, in school, and I was only presenting to a small class, I didn't know how to brand, how to market. So this is the whole business and finance side that I didn't know. But all as I knew is that if I do become the first person to complete Mongolia, it's a world first. There's barely any records left in the world. They're all speed records, or fastest, highest, quickest, whatnot. But for a first, there's going to be some sort of career overlap there where I have to get good at this in order to help grow and my passion, which is the adventure side. And on completion, that's when I did my first TEDx talk. I did a UK theatre tour. There was word about publishing a book, but it was still very tricky. I got a glimpse of what the potential future could look like if I am persistent enough to be able to continue on this path. But I was making, I think that year, again, just to be transparent, I think I probably made no more than £3,000 in 12 months after completing a world first record.
Wow.
So I was still training in the back garden. I was still living with my parents. I was 24, 25 at this point, 24. And I was like, we need to go again. And that's when I went on to do Madagascar, or to attempt Madagascar.
Wow. And the thing I value the most, obviously your honesty, Ash, is really well received because we're very open and raw here, and there's no such thing as secrets in this studio. But I find it fascinating how you never started out to make a business of it.
Yes.
So, and let's be honest, your passion is in the adventure. The business is a massive thing in itself, isn't it?
A lot of learning to be done.
Contracts, agents, team, everything. And you're going, I'm quite happy being solo, doing this, pulling this trailer, and I'll be able to sort of make it work. Yeah. So talk to me about what happened then after, like, when did the book become a real thing, and actually being a speaker and having this big personal brand actually became a reality?
Yeah. You know what? It was probably after the third world first record, I would say. There was Madagascar, and that Mongolia and Madagascar help the brand now, but back then it was hard to get it off the ground. I filmed Mongolia, but failed to get a TV show. I journaled the whole Mongolia trip, but failed to get a book. So whilst there was a huge success in achieving a world first, it was almost like there was no money in the adventure world, and that I had gone the wrong direction. Because for me, world first, in my eyes, is like a Olympic gold medal. But that's where the money is in the Olympics and in sports. There was no money necessarily in the adventure world. And so I knew that I would, and I did struggle a lot financially, but I kept going with the belief that I had, which was just keep going, just keep doing what you love, just keep surviving these expeditions, because alternatively, if I was to stop doing it and go into something that I don't enjoy, and this is what my mum said as well, actually. She said she'd prefer to see me not risking my life, but doing stuff that's on the edge, knowing I'm happy, rather than doing something I don't like and just watching my spirit die. And I do remember that. I was like, although I'm suffering a lot financially, and I'm 24, I'm living with my parents, I can't even afford to hang with my friends on a night out or whatnot. I'm literally just rigid in terms of focusing solely on this career and these expeditions, which doesn't come with money. I knew that one day it will, and I just got to stay on it. And it took many, many years. Madagascar was a wild expedition. 155 days it took to become the first person ever to hike the entire length of the island. It's a big island as well, fourth biggest island in the world, via the interior, where no one really goes. And we saw communities that hadn't ever seen a white person before, some that completely abandoned the villages, while summiting the 8 highest mountains along the way. So 1,600 miles altogether. And I was held at gunpoint by the military. I had to avoid the bandits of the south of Madagascar. I had to cross crocodile-infested rivers. I was bitten by spiders that infected. I was hunting. I was gathering. I was making my own paths with machete in hand. I contracted the deadliest strain of malaria and almost died. Just about made it. And the doctor said if you were like 2-3 hours longer, you would have slipped into a coma. And so there were I don't think out of the 155 days, there wasn't one day that was a decent day's hike, pleasant day's trek. It was full on. But it was after that, again, that things started to, and I saw it even more so. So much that I didn't waste any time from Madagascar to the Yangtze. And the Yangtze is the one that I sort of officialized the career. and was getting paid good money for talks. Had a book published called Mission Possible, which was actually after Madagascar. Sorry, I was meant to say after Madagascar. It was the book that covered Mongolia and Madagascar, which then allowed me to see a clear future in what I'm doing, which prompted the Yangtze. But it was the Yangtze River that sort of hit the nail on the head, really, because even after Madagascar, it was a struggle financially. And it's great to be able to talk about this now, because I didn't say this to anyone after Madagascar, or even after the Yangtze River, which was in 2019. You know, I wouldn't talk about the finances beforehand, but I think it's so important for people to understand that, you know, sometimes you're just going to have to struggle. If it's something you really want and you believe in, and you can see it for yourself moving forward, if you plan 3 to 5 years ahead of you, then just stay on it, suffer now. And then, you know, you will be rewarded in kind if you're able to stay the course. And so that's what I kept telling myself. It took a lot longer than I anticipated, but we got there in the end. And it was probably, that Yangtze, which was a 4,000-mile trip, you know, 352-day expedition. Guinness World Records. We had National Geographic air it on TV. I was then called on to the Joe Rogan podcast. Many other podcasts, was managed by Dwayne Johnson's agent. And this is kind of where I was like, wow, sponsors start coming on board, you know, the talks increased dramatically. But it took I left in 2010 to travel. 2019 is when I finished the Yangtze. But I was making money before then. I would say it took a good 7 years, really, 7 to 8 years.
Yeah. Do you know what? I love your honesty though, because I see this in entrepreneurship in so many ways. And obviously your level of risk and resilience you needed is very different to what people need when they start a business. And I think if anyone's listening to this and think, I've been putting off having a business, or I've waited for years and my business isn't working, like, you were going on these exhibitions, risking your life, still patiently waiting for the funds to follow. And I think a lot of people in business, especially with online businesses, they think they can start in a week, be making great money, you know, overnight success. And actually it took you 7 years to become an overnight success, you know, because we have to put the work in, we have to put the graft in. And I think it's your resilience and patience, and also probably love for it as well. You can tell when you talk about it.
You have to. I think you have to love it. You don't enjoy, I think I love the adventures, but the business side, it was really hard on me. I think I've been rejected thousands upon thousands of times. And that would really sort of dampen my spirit. And I would just be like, I would try to ignore that, you know, try to shut it in there. Because when I'm out there on my expeditions, I'm relying solely on myself to survive it. You know, I don't need anyone. I'm able to just go and through the preparation, you know, beforehand. But when it comes to the business, you're having to have a commission with TV. You're having to have the top man of a brand say yes. You're having to have publishing agent of a book agree. So there's a lot of neediness and waiting and a crazy amount of reliance on other people in order to get ahead. And I despised that for such a long time. But I've sort of learned to adapt, and it's better now. We're in a better place. And it's good you have to work hard to get something. Otherwise, you know, everyone would sort of do it if it was that kind of overnight success. It's like I get a lot of people write to me now and say, you know, there's plenty of people out there doing great things, and all of a sudden you've done one great thing and you've shot to success. And I'm just like, they just don't know what happened behind the limelight, when I was grinding in a dark garage in my garden where I couldn't afford no gym membership, not for 6 months or a year, not for 2 years, not for 3 years, for 5 years, for 6 years, you know. But they won't see that. That's why it's actually good to be open and honest on a podcast with yourself, because I think there will be people that hear this that maybe have followed the journeys and didn't realize what a struggle it was. But I do thank the past for where I am now. I appreciate it because I'm much more grateful for it. But it's a grind. But we all face the grind, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. But I love that. And I love trolls and haters so much, because some of the stuff people come out with, and we talk about it quite a lot on the show actually, because I find the bigger your brand gets, the more people you get opinions from, which is natural, right? And not always going to be positive. But for someone to say to you, Ash, you did one great thing. I mean, that one great thing, you've done more than one great thing, but it's not like you did a TEDx talk and that made it, you know? It was you risking your life.
352 days on that one thing,
you know? Whereas some people can't even stick a business or a job for 352 days, you know? And I think that's not me being rude to anyone that is just living the normal life. But I think what we need to do is put it into perspective. And that, you know, one of the things that I value is you sharing that, you know, even though you had the book deal, even though you've been doing these great things, the money took time to come. Because obviously I run a publishing business, and I'm actually very transparent with people saying, you know, we'll help you publish your book, but don't expect to be a millionaire by the end of it. You know, it's what comes next. It's the graft after that. It's the next steps. And so for you, what was it like getting your publishing deal, working on Mission Possible, and everything that came after that?
It was good. It was interesting, because I think when it came to the book, I didn't really appreciate it that much back then. Whereas now it's flipped. I know the power of a really good book, whereas back then it was almost like I wanted to publish it because we've got all of these stories, and we've got sort of life lessons learned from the extremes that can be placed in sort of everyday life, you know. So it's a really good sort of lessons to the book that I felt that if people read, they'll take something from it. So it's not just about, you know, me and my adventures, it's what they can take from it and utilize certain aspects of that to help themselves in career or life or whatnot. So I was excited for that point, but I almost felt like I rushed it because I had a big UK theatre tour coming up. And so we condensed it, and I think we tried to get it out within, write it and print it. I've got a feeling it was 5 months, which that's fast, right?
Very fast.
That's too fast. But we did that just so that we could sell extra copies on the UK theatre tour. So I want to do another book for sure, because there isn't one on the Yangtze, there isn't one on the Great Wall of China. And now it will come from a point of sort of spending over a year and like making sure it's a very, not that Mission Possible is a bad book, it's a good book, lots of reviews, lots of people enjoyed it, but it could have been so much better. And like my girlfriend, when she was reading it, she said she's a huge bookworm. She loves book reads like all the time. She said it's great, but you kind of breeze through the Gobi Desert. You don't say how you almost died and what that felt like, and you don't explain the temperature. And now that it was like pulling a concrete block through hell. You don't explain how it was sinking in and what your organs were doing, how you felt them drying up, and that you went over a week without seeing a single human. And I'm like, yeah, looking back now, because to me it was a case of I did it. It was hard. I got it done. But people want to know that process, you know? And so, yeah, I need to republish that one, really. Republish it or do a new one, and I'll be able to focus in. But it did help. I think it just provides more kudos as well, doesn't it? Having a published book out there. You know, and it's something you can promote and be proud of and sell during talks, or, you know, if people want to know more about sort of your background and how you did whatever you're doing, they can just read the book, and that might help them on their way. So it was great to get it out there.
Yeah, fantastic. And I get this all the time with authors we work with that come to us and say, I want to publish a book like in 3 months. And I'm like, look, the publishing process is kind of fixed, the timeline.
Yeah.
It's how fast it gets written. So whether you write it, ghostwrite it, you know, it's about that. And I think I love that you mentioned about the UK tour, though, because one of the things I'm always saying to authors, because we specialize in speakers, podcasters, and entrepreneur books. Right, so the people like us, people that have talks, that have a place they can share their book, whether it's podcast, TV, whatever.
Got you.
And I always say to people, be strategic. Like the fact that you had that UK tour lineup made sense. So if I was a publisher, I could totally relate why. And I can imagine now why you've got that.
Yeah.
But the good thing is knowing in advance of like, right, we're going to give a year for this. And also, let's be honest, you've got other exhibitions planned. It's not like you can, you know, write in your, you know, in the mornings or whatever, depending on what other stuff, keeping yourself alive is a huge part of your, your business model, you know? So I think it's about finding the right balance and the right time, isn't it?
Yeah,
now,
100%. Yeah, it is.
You've challenged yourself in many different ways. 3 first world records currently as we're recording this. I know you've got more in the pipeline as well. So what is coming up next?
And so this is another very exciting one. that I've kind of been working hard behind the scenes for maybe a year since the idea came to mind, but maybe only 2-3 months to actually get it to where it is now, which is we're about to announce very soon. And this is the Amazon. I'm going to the Amazon jungle. It's in South America, but there's a country in South America that no one really knows about. And this country has more forest per square kilometre than any other country on the planet. It's the true density of the Amazon jungle, and it is relatively unexplored. It's a place called Suriname, if you've heard of it.
Definitely not, but I'm so intrigued.
This is great. I think when people think of South America, it's like Brazil, Argentina, Chile. But you mention like Suriname, they're like, is that Africa? Where's that? But it's very unexplored. It was mapped in the 1800s. Lots of expeditions went on there, but they only got so far across the country, like further west, before they abandoned and they went back. And the rest of the mapping has effectively been done by satellite. And so what we're attempting is a source to sea expedition to become the first to kayak from the source of the 𝘔𝘪𝘴𝘴𝘪𝘣𝘭𝘦 to the sea, which will be gone maybe 40 to 50 days it'll take, but it will be very concentrated, high intensity. It's got everything there, everything that you can think of, from your most venomous spiders, your most venomous snakes. You've got jaguars, puma, anacondas, the biggest snakes, piranha, electric eel, stingray, caiman crocodiles. And because we're going to such a remote location, a lot of these wildlife, they've not really seen humans in the past, maybe apart from indigenous. So they don't necessarily know how to react to humans. They don't know if they should approach, if they should be scared and like run away. And so they probably will be approaching through curiosity. And how it came about was a team on the ground, Unlocked Wildlife. A guy called Matthew Wallace reached out. He was like, Ash, I've got a crazy expedition. It's a potential first. There's no evidence to suggest anyone has ever done it before, but it's wild and it's extremely remote and we don't really know how we'll do it yet. And I'm like, I'm already excited. Tell me more. And then he said about it being a source to sea expedition while summiting the highest and the second highest mountain, which there's been more people out in space than there have been on the summit of these particular mountains. And it will be a journey whereby we will literally be carrying hammocks. We will be hunting and gathering along the way. We'll be sleeping between the trees, taking sort of inflatable, thick, hefty kayaks from source to sea of the 𝘔𝘪𝘴𝘴𝘪𝘣𝘭𝘦 River in Suriname. And so I was, as you can imagine, instantly hooked. And like, how can we make this work? And it's funny, only like 3-4 weeks ago, because this is all still relatively new, I messaged, because we've got Guinness Book of Records on board. They're officializing 3 world records from this one journey. And they wanted to know at what altitude we're going to be dropped off by helicopter. So I messaged them, assuming they know that there must be some sort of landing patch, that we can lower the helicopter and land. And I said, what's the altitude of the landing pad where we start the journey, to start venturing up to try to find the source, because there's also no evidence to suggest that anyone's been to the source of the 𝘔𝘪𝘴𝘴𝘪𝘣𝘭𝘦 River, which is crazy in this day and age because it's just so dense with jungle. So it's not been thoroughly mapped. And all of the sort of Royal Geographic Society, the societies in the Netherlands and the societies in Suriname, we're contacting them. And they're like, yeah, we can't help. We've got coordinates, but all of the maps are different coordinates. And it's like, this isn't it. So we're trying to help the mapping agencies now by officially mapping the source of this river, because we just can't find. And we're going to the top T's and the most relevant countries who will know best, and speaking to the locals. My guys out on the ground are. And so he said there is no place to land the helicopter. It was like, but you lead tours, Suriname like very well, and you take people on these journeys. It was like, yeah, but we never go that deep. We're going all the way west. We can't find people to ask who have done this before or have landed in this area. I was like, okay, so how do we do it? It's like, we'll all be in the helicopter. We'll be looking out over the jungle canopy through the window for a place where we can land. there might be a sandbank. And I'm like, okay, but what if we can't land? What if there is no open patch or sandbank? And he says, we just lower the helicopter, we search for deep water along the river, and we jump whilst the helicopter's there. And I'm like, this is perfect. And I'm like, let's hope we can't find anywhere to land, because I want to jump from the helicopter. But in all fairness, we do have to be very situationally aware. With this one, it's shorter, but the intensity's ramped up. We'll be carrying all our beans and lentils for the first highest peak and attempting to summit that in the fastest time. And then the second peak, no paths, machete in hand, watching out where we stand. There's bullet ants, there's hornets, there's everything you could think of. So we need to be hyper aware. Even with the trees, you can't grab hold of the bamboo because they might have the spiky hairs on them. So everything's almost out to get you, but it's not. It's about being in harmony with your surroundings and not being too reckless, because they don't want to get you. It's just if you accidentally stand into an ant's nest or the back end of a snake, they're going to react and defend themselves. Wow. But it's going to be a mad trip, and hopefully we come back in one piece. There's 4 of us all together. I'm taking a social media content creator, Jacob Hudson, out with me this time, which is vital, because all of the previous expeditions, they were filmed for, the last 2 were filmed for TV. And it just puts up such a barrier. They were like, we need exclusivity. You can't talk or share too much on social media. And because of that, the following, you don't see this growth like the expeditions deserve. But with this one, we're looking to do that this time with the interactivity and engagement on socials.
I love that. I love the balance of it, because you're doing something that's so challenging. And obviously you seem like the person that loves that rush, and you love that curiosity of like, what are we going to find? How do you get the other people ready? Like, your social media, my fiance is our social media manager. If I told him he needed to learn how to do that, I think he'd be like, this wedding, let's talk about it, How do you get your team ready up to the speed and the person that you are? And do you ever feel pressure to look after them because they trust in you, right?
Yeah, big. That's a very good question. So I almost lost a photographer that joined me in Madagascar during a nighttime river crossing, which was cyclone season and crocodile infested. But we had to cross it, otherwise it'd be uncrossable by the time the next storm hits. And that was probably, although I've almost died in the desert, gunpoint malaria, actually when we almost lost Suzanne, who joined us on that trip for a few weeks, that was by far the scariest. Potentially losing someone else's life under my responsibility. And then with the Yangtze, because I kind of breezed over that, but the Yangtze was a big project. We were followed by a pack of wolves. We had bears that we had to be aware of. There were landslides, and altogether the different film crew and guides that tried to join, out of 16 that joined at different sections, 10 were evacuated. They just couldn't keep up. It was altitude sickness. It was fear of wildlife. It was the landslides. I had my UK photographer fly out to China, which is a hell of a distance, then fly out all west, plan to join me for 3 weeks. After 6 hours on day number 1, evacuated. 6 hours. And so that was always the biggest worry. And I shut the expedition down. Not the expedition, but I stopped people from joining me. But with this Suriname project, I kind of organically ran it by Jacob, my social media content guy, and said, look at this. I took a screenshot of Matt in Suriname's message to me and said, how about this? We go there, we do this, you film it. We've got great content for social media. We'll film it if TV wants to take it as well. And he was just kind of like, I don't think it was more of a, this is what we're doing, come and join, it'll be great. But then he took it to the next step and told work to block out, in his contract, a certain amount of months so he can disappear and do this. And we didn't necessarily think it would come to fruition, but over time it has. And that's been sort of our main focus, especially for the past 2 to 3 months. And the lads in Suriname, they're used to this. They're snake handlers, they're wildlife experts. So they are, and even for them, although they are so knowledgeable with the wildlife and the Amazon, and they've led BBC for different projects as well, they've never been this far west. So even they're sort of giddy and excited and uncertain with what's going to happen. We might come across things that haven't been mapped that we can potentially name. I know Steve Backshaw did something similar when he was in Suriname. He came across these rapids that weren't on the map. He got to name them, and then a river which he named Ghost River that was never mapped.
Wow!
Which is in the 21st century, in this day and age, that's just mind blowing. That's just crazy, you know. Yeah. So hopefully we do come across stuff that is, and I'm sure we will. I think it will be a very challenging journey, but one of discovery, because it's got like 94% of the country is just pure jungle coverage, which is almost unheard of now with what's happening to the Amazon. So probably, hopefully spread more awareness on that as well. But yeah, it will be great.
I'm so excited for you, Ash. Honestly, I just think I could never do it in a million years. And I feel like I'm so inspired by how you've just lapped it up and just jumped into it, and also trusted in your team and other people to come along the journey with you. When are you going?
We're looking to go end of August to start it September.
So when we actually release this, so we're recording this during our season break. When we release this, you'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be out there.
So if anyone's watching this, you need to get on Instagram and see what's going on.
Nice. See
what's coming out.
Yeah, see whereabouts we are. Yeah, because I'm sure we've managed to secure a satellite sponsor, so we should be able to drop live posts, I hope. But if not, we'll be like totally off the radar.
Yeah, and we'll find out when you get back.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, Ash, you've been so inspiring on the show. I feel like I could pick your brains so much more about how you do these exhibitions.
There's a lot to discuss.
Maybe we'll get you back
especially
after
the business side.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely. Maybe we'll get you back after that exhibition, talk a bit more about the business side, because I can imagine talk about sponsors and there's so many agents, moving parts. Yeah.
And that's one thing that it took me a little while to, because kind of being that lone wolf at the beginning, I thought was the right way, but it's definitely not the right way. And then I started to have like a bigger team sort of evolve around me, and I realized that they are better at certain things, and I need to let them run without sort of poking my nose in. I don't like this, I don't like that.
Yeah, of course.
That's been a hard lesson for me to learn, but a good one. You need to be a team player. You need to understand leadership, teamwork, and how to let people run with what they're good at. And that is, without them. And without all of the logistics I had for Mongolia, Madagascar, the Yangtze, it just wouldn't have been a part. It wouldn't have been a success, and it's a shame that they don't get as much credit as they deserve, because they are the important cogs turning behind the scenes that just no one sees, no one knows, but they're the sort of key element to make everything
definitely
a big success.
In most industries it wouldn't be relevant, but in yours they somewhat help to keep you alive. It's that level of importance, and I think that's the power of what you're doing and what you're opening everyone else's eyes to do. So thank you so much for sharing. It's been so great having you on the show. Now, Ash, we have one question that we ask all our guests at the end of every episode, and this is: who do you know sorry, say that again. Who do you know that has an inspiring story that you think we should have on the show next?
Oh God, so many. Who would I say? There's so many, but you know what? I'm going to say Raha, who is a female in Saudi Arabia, first female to summit Mount Everest. I believe she summited the 7 highest peaks. And that's such a challenge, being from Saudi Arabia with the certain restrictions as a female especially. And she's gone on, through political difficulties to achieve massive things, and I think she would be really good to have on the show, and I think you would really get on with her because she's got the entrepreneur side as well, works with a lot of big key brands now as well. But she went through like a similar process of grinding, but certainly in a much harder way, being female from Saudi. So I think she would be a really good one.
Thank you so much. Well, let's see if we can make that happen. So thank you so much, Ash, for that recommendation, and obviously for being so open and honest on the show. It's been great having you.
Of course, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, do let us know how you get on with the exhibition when you get back.
Yeah. It felt strange talking about
after being quiet for so long.
After being quiet for so long, I'm like, where do I start? I'm like, how do I start with this one? So the Amazon.
Here you go.
Because if I said Suriname, people would be like, where?
Yeah.
What? So I have to say the Amazon, South America, Suriname, because it is so unknown. So no one's. Has there been anyone that's maybe one out of the people that I've told? No one has known where Suriname is.
I definitely know.
Yeah. Like even other explorers, adventurers, they're like, Suriname, where's that? I'm like, yes, got you.
Yeah. Should I quickly record the outro, Chris? Mm-hmm. Is that right? Right, cool. I'll record the outro to this camera and then we can carry on. Cool. Awesome. Wow. What an episode with Ash. That has just been so inspiring. I mean, the fact that I have not been to the gym in over 6 months is quite embarrassing now when I hear Ash's incredible tales and such inspiring information from a business perspective and also just from a resilience perspective. So let us know in the comments, what have you enjoyed the most out of this episode? What has stood out to you that has inspired you the most or made you want to push yourself out of your comfort zone? Do share in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to any of our usual audio platforms, podcasting, Spotify, Apple, or anywhere else, or if you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to the show so you don't miss our next inspiring guest, and I'll see you next week.